Alright, well, welcome everybody. Rob is going to be joining us in a minute. But welcome everybody to this Handshake community call. Hopefully we can start to make this more of a monthly type of deal. More people will join in and ask questions and cover whatever topics that you guys want to listen to or get more information on or get more clarity on because that's what we want to do is we want to educate and we want to make everything as clear as possible to as many people as possible. But I guess we can just start out and talk about the crazy high January sales. So block domains, you want to kind of start us out and like talk about any kind of market trends that you've seen with these sales in the past month?
Sure. Thanks, Fist. And thanks for organizing this and great to be here with everybody. Like you said, it's absolutely been really a remarkable January. Kind of got a hint of this in December with that reversed the trend as far as name-based marketplace secondary sales, which is not everything that's selling, but fair assumption that that's capturing the majority of sales. So we saw that actually grow from November into December, but then really hit, as you referenced, warp speed so far. Month. Today is second to last day of the month, so almost at the end of the month now. As of a few days ago, just on a breaking it down because the month was in progress on a daily HNS average basis as far as all secondary sales, we were up something along the order of 70% transaction volume month over month. So that's really great. It's as far as within different categories. Maybe we can dig into that as the call goes on if people are interested. But I was interested to see. I know Zach's on from the Shake, but he had posted some information about on the name registration front. All of the activity that we were seeing there with names being registered. So, excuse me. It seems like reading the tea leaves a little bit. New people learning, new people making investments or increasing investments to get good names. I've definitely been a net buyer recently, maybe to a dangerous extent, but it's just been really exciting. So I'll stop rambling and let some others chime in as well. But those are just some quick thoughts from watching the market the last month.
Yeah, and maybe it has to do something with the Opera integration or the announcement of the Opera integration to come to be. I think that should be Q1 of this year. So maybe that's like more people getting excited about names and stuff.
Absolutely. It seems like a lot of the, there are already a lot of legacy domainers who are, active in Handshake and who have, drank the Kool-Aid or who are at least viewing it as a hedge. It did seem like after the Opera announcement, just using Twitter as a barometer, that there were a lot of, I follow a lot of domainers who maybe haven't drank the Kool-Aid for Handshake yet, and you had people chatting about things more, asking more questions. It does seem like, among some of the legacy domaining people, the first inclination sometimes is to buy SLDs, which maybe deviates from, most of us on the phone, I think, are really into the TLD game. So it's been interesting to see some people come in and say, all right, I just bought some SLDs. What should I do now? And I think that'll be great potentially for some SLD sellers. I hope that there's not a mismatch with expectations as far as like how quickly they'll resell or how widely they can be put to use. But I think the community does a good job of educating people about that. But I think you're totally right, Fist. The Opera announcement, that's a huge feather in the cap of Handshake and a great way to get more eyeballs and attention.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit on the point of usage of names, and I think that kind of segues into our next, or like just into something else with just name usage. Zach, you actually wanted to talk about this. You want to kind of talk a little bit more about that, or you had something cooking up?
Yeah, sure. So I think along the lines of what we've seen with name registrations, both in primary markets and on the name-based marketplace, is that we're about 2 years in, and we have a high level of name distribution now. There's almost 3 million names that have been registered on chain, and at the same time, we have a whole bunch of tools now that make accessibility of Handshake domains a lot easier. Matt, who's on the call with us, um, uh, who works at Impervious, has shipped a bunch of those products, and we have the fingertip resolver, and we have Beacon browser, and um, and so the combination of those tools that make accessing names easier and a higher distribution of names now than ever. I think what I'd like to see is a transition from speculation of names into increasing use of those names, and I think that'll come from a variety of places. There's different cohorts of people who are using names in different ways, and also come to the Handshake community with different things that appeal to them. And so there's going to be different narratives that resonate with different people too. Um, but I think looking ahead into this year, I think name usage is something that I'd like to see pushed, and am excited to see some greater adoption in.
Yeah, for sure. And Matt always says, "There's no what is it when you say there's no usage without security or something along those lines." I may have got that wrong.
I like to say there's no business without security and no value without business.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. But yeah, again, I always want to thank you every time you come to speak because you like Impervious has been shipping, like Zach said, all those products fingertip. That's pretty much the only way to resolve names securely with HTTPS, which is just awesome. Um, but you think you could give us a little bit more insight about what other products you guys are working on in Impervious?
Sure, and to be fair, the work I'm about to describe is really coming from Buffer, who's the contributor who wrote Let's Dane on his own as a community member before he was hired by Mike Carson at Impervious. He's really doing the application side. He also helped implement Forever Domains. I'm just my contributions are on the layer one, the core software. I work on HSD and HNS. SNSD is the light client. It's part of Fingertip and Beacon browser. So in that sense, I'm contributing to these applications and helping him beta test. But I really want everybody to appreciate the hard work that is coming from Buffer. He's just not as addicted to the social media side as I am. But anyway, yeah. So you mentioned Fingertip. That's been off for a while. The other thing that Impervious released is called Beacon browser. It was released for iOS. This is a fork of Firefox for iOS that actually has SNSD installed when you open the app. It connects directly to the Handshake peer-to-peer network. It is not a full node; it's a light client. There's a big difference there, and it also uses an external resolver that's kind of like a workaround. I could talk more about the technical details if you're interested. But as far as the timeline, Beacon browser came out for iOS. The Apple App Store is according to Buffer the hardest app store to get in. So I think that's why he wanted to get there first. Interestingly, if you have a new M1 Mac, you can also install Beacon browser on your Mac from the Apple App Store, and it runs in desktop mode, which is kind of a nice surprise. Buffer is currently working on the Android versions and the desktop version of Beacon browser. These will be Chromium based. The reason he switched from Firefox to Chromium is for performance reasons. The reason he started with Firefox to begin with is because Google has a monopoly on the internet. So that's the trade-off we're working with. But because Dane, our security model, requires a few extra requests, browsers usually have hated Dane because of the lag that it introduces in resolving websites. So I think Buffer thought that going back to Chromium to get the performance boost would help offset the extra drawbacks from Dane. Anyway, so hopefully we can look forward to a beacon release for these other platforms, in the next couple months. And then everybody will really have a way to resolve Handshake names securely without going through a central gateway or through a third party or anything like that. And as far as I know, we will be the only blockchain-based naming system with this ability, full stop, period, end of argument. ENS can't do this. YAT can't do this. Butterfly Protocol, whatever else you got. Decentral Web. There's a new one I heard about today called Ion, which is a decentralized identity that's embedded in Bitcoin, which is cool. But you need a Bitcoin full node. You can't do that on your mobile phone. You can't do that, in your village in the outskirts of Senegal where they barely have an internet connection. When I use the word decentralized, I mean everything about it is decentralized, not just the data on the blockchain, but how users interact with that data. And if there's somebody out there who doesn't have the equipment or the internet bandwidth to access your app, they're not part of your community. They're not part of your ecosystem. And we need to try to be inclusive of everybody if we want to create a decentralized system for the world.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what makes Handshake so powerful and just better than all the other decentralized naming systems out there, is because it is so versatile. You can put it anywhere, and anybody can join our network, or hopefully soon anybody will be able to join our network and resolve names in a trustless manner without having to rely on the authority of anybody else. And that's what we're all about. Um, Also, you were in Miami Hack Week not too long ago too. Were you guys cooking up anything interesting over there?
Yeah, we were cooking up some good times. There was Miami Hack Week was cool. There's 23 houses. A few of them are blockchain related, but definitely not all of them. There's AI stuff and robotics stuff around. I think the team that won did something like minted an NFT from a weather balloon. I don't know. COVID made things hard. There were testing stations at all the big events, and a lot of the attendees who were younger than me and were there more for networking had a great time going around and socializing at these events. I was only there for a couple of days. The Handshake House, we had a barbecue on Tuesday, and a lot of people came by and asked about Handshake, which was great. I was really, really happy to meet Stefan, who's the creator of Miami. He's from Germany. Met him for the first time. That was awesome. Also, Edad from Realty DAO. He's been a Handshake community member for a long time. Those were the three of us were kind of like the Handshake bros. Jihan attended at some point, but I actually missed his presence. And then there were some attendees who were just learning about Handshake, even one young hacker who had never really heard about Bitcoin before and just kind of like wanted to learn some new stuff. And it's great to see the light bulb come on with people like that. Our Handshake House did not actually submit a hackathon entry. I don't think we were hanging out and talking most of the time. So that we did have some cool ideas, which may turn into real projects soon. I think the hackathon idea that we came up with in some of the late night discussions was a kind of social network based Handshake name identity and verifying messages with signature space, all that stuff, kind of to create community block lists, gray lists. If you're on the Discord, there's been some discussion about how are we going to nanny Handshake names, people who are using Handshake names for things that other people might just want to not access or might want to prevent their children from accessing or anyone on their network from accessing. That could be illicit content, illegal content, or simply names that collide with the ICANN namespace. Easy way to do that is for Impervious to just add a block list into Fingertip. There's something a little centralized-y about that, and so our hackathon project idea that didn't come to fruition, but that we had a lot of fun whiteboarding, was a way to a piece of software where individual members with Handshake names could sort of upvote and downvote Handshake sites and could sort of form coalitions. So you can imagine like a German language speaking network and like a hip hop enthusiasts group, or like a group of people who don't like seafood or whatever, stuff like that, that could link together and create add social scores to like your close friends and to their close friends and stuff like that, and kind of all come together so that you can have a browser extension that would warn you if you're going to a website that people you trust, if they didn't trust that website. So that was, that was the idea. It would have been cool if maybe we had more people or more time, but you know what, I would say the experience was awesome. Joseph Poon came by the Handshake House, and it was great to talk with the founders of the project. And I saw my good friend Boima, who was there in the early days of development. So yeah, it was a great time. It's nice to get some good weather too.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Nothing wrong with hanging out, having a good time and whatnot. But also, I just want to clarify to everyone in the chat that may not know this community block list type of deal. It happens on the resolver level. So it's not anything like censoring the actual names on the blockchain. It's like each resolver can basically choose what Matt was saying. They can choose what TLDs they want to resolve and what TLDs they don't for safety or collision reasons or anything else. And I definitely see that. And Circa talks a lot about what is it, like copyrighted names and stuff like that, and that being an issue in the future. I think this kind of gray list will develop as time goes on and as the community decides what they want to allow through. And also, I just want to say to anybody is invited to come up and speak if they want to ask any type of question or whatever. I think you just have to raise your hand. This is my first time using this platform, so you'll have to forgive me a little bit, but just raise your hand or whatever you have to do, and I'll put you up on stage so you can speak or ask a question or whatever you want to do. But Zach, didn't you say you were working on something to post names on Arweave or something like that?
So yeah, I'm working through an experiment with a friend of mine to think through what publishing might look like around Handshake names. The the core of the idea came from seeing Mirror, which is a publishing platform on Ethereum that leans into some of the tools that Ethereum is really good at around economics and governance, and wrapping that in publishing. And that led to a line of questioning about what sort of things does Handshake do that can enhance publishing. And I think that what we're seeing generally is this the arc of the internet is bending back towards decentralization. And we've seen some of the publishing tools that exist pre-crypto try to do that in certain ways. And so Substack is nice in that it gives you a email list. And so if for some reason Substack goes away, you can exit with your distribution, with your audience. And while that's nice to have an escape plan, being able to publish on your own platform on a name that you own, that you can't get rugged from, it's not going to go away, is compelling. And being able to layer that into a tool that also posts that content to a decentralized storage platform like Arweave, in the same way that Mirror does with their platform, gives you an added layer of decentralization, knowing that your content is stored permanently. The way that Arweave works, you pay once, and you're done and you have permanent storage. And so I don't have much more to share about the project yet, but I do think that these sorts of applications that are native to Handshake and speak to Handshake owners could help move the needle a bit on name usage. We have things like D-links on one end of the spectrum, which are a link tree product from Namebase, which is very low hanging fruit to start using your name if you don't have anything to start doing with it yet. On the other end of the spectrum, you can use your name for all sorts of sites that you might be working on or building. And in the middle of the spectrum, there are some tools that you can plug into with your Handshake name. But I do think that tools that are built specifically for Handshake users in mind to use their names will help to get people to start being more active in putting their names to work. And so blogging feels like one of those things that might have some broad interest in the community.
Yeah, and I really like your idea of posting everything on Arweave too, because it's the same thing that NFTs do, as well as like, they have all their on-chain stuff on Ethereum and whatnot, but they actually post the JPEG on Arweave, so it's there forever and you can't lose it. So yeah, that's a really cool idea. I'm excited to see where you take this in the future. Um, Rob, you joined us a little bit late, man. You got anything for us? Anything that you've seen in the market that you want to speak on?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Hello? Sweet. Sweet. Yeah. Sorry, I came in a bit late. Was watching the tennis last night. Anyway, so lately in the market, I've actually been seeing some like pretty crazy stuff with singular English names, which has been really surprising to me. The average price for each has like skyrocketed, and it seems like the floor now for them are really solidifying, given that it's been higher frequency in sales. So I think this is just like I wanted to make some deep like sort of analysis on this, but it just seems that whenever a few people decide to go hard on a certain category that has been has had increased interest over time slowly, then it can become a trend very quickly, and then the floor hardens up a lot when that occurs. So that's what we've been seeing with the English names, and it's a bit of a squeeze. So now the prices are increasing very rapidly. This happened very similarly with emojis back in the day, if you guys remember, like when the singular emojis started popping off, people then went to the double, triple, things like that, and then it went nuts to like quadruple because it was becoming scarce and the demand was going insane. So that's what we're seeing with the English names. Another reason maybe as well is because all the news about integrations are coming up. So I guess whales or even regular retail are sort of FOMOing in, speculating based on this factor. Yeah, so that's another reason I think we've seen an increase in registrations. So here, have a look at this stats. So I think this is the highest we've had in regards to registrations on primary market since August. So that's like the third or fourth highest month overall. And that's pretty good given that we're not even in a bull market. So February 2021 was huge because we were in a bull market at the time, and this will be I think we'll beat that easy next bull market. Another thing I've been seeing is the increase in registrations and secondary market transactions of double emojis, but the not the direct doubles, but like the combos. So there's been some one-off sales that I've mentioned previously, like 100K H&S, things like that. Like the star and the eyes and things like that. Because people are starting to realize that the meaning that we attribute and the utility we attribute to like the English names, like I don't know, for example, bank or food or something that's very brandable, can really translate into emojis also. So on Apple, for example, on Apple iPhones, whenever you write something, an emoji comes up to translate that in a way. And that's becoming more and more prevalent. And I think that's a really cool thing to speculate on, because a lot of people may not understand what an emoji combo could mean. So it's sort of a guessing game. And I think that's the next big thing as well. Yeah, it's been pretty cool lately, and I'm really excited given all this new news in regards to integrations, security. People are a bit more comfortable speculating, and the prices will go insane from here.
Yeah, actually, one thing that I was really surprised about at the last Flamingo Handshake auction, there were some single emoji domains that were going for 10K or 15K or something like that, when the previous auctions had been like 15 or 20K H&S for those, which I was pretty surprised to see. Maybe it was just like not that many people showing up and bidding. But that's also, if you guys want to get some cheap single emojis, you can show up to these Flamingo Handshake auctions that they're hosted every month. And you can pick up some great domains there just for your general information. But yeah, I guess we can transition into like anybody can speak on this, or if you want to come up on stage and talk, just like your predictions on where you see H&S going in the next, or since we are in a new year, where you see this year going. If anyone wants to speak on that, and you can talk about this tech-wise or market-wise or whatever.
Yeah. Who wants to speak on that? Do you want me to do?
Anybody. Block the means. It looks like unmuted himself. You wanna speak on that real quick?
Yeah. Go, Colin.
Oh
Hype
yeah,
us up.
sure. All right, thanks, Rob. Yeah, definitely, speaking more from the market side as opposed to the technical side. But I've been thinking about Zach's comment regarding we've got this great distribution of names. We've got so many, upwards of 3 million registered. Many, have been put to use, but a lot are just, in the warehouse, mine included. So, how do you put names to use? And a big stumbling block that I see right now is, you can't use a name if you can't transact a name, of course, if you're not already the current owner. And, with, the phenomenon that Rob was talking about, with a lot of action and appreciation around English dictionary words, things of that nature. I do think that you're seeing an awareness, a growing awareness among sellers that nobody's going to get rich in all likelihood. Nobody's going to get rich on a single TLD. And, I think that people struggle with that sometimes because there's a lot of emotion and effort, getting up, fighting auctions, whatever. There's a lot that goes into acquiring these names. And I definitely get that. I think that, maybe people fall in love with their assets, and you see that in different industries, and say, this is perfect. And they want future pricing for transactions today. I think that what you're seeing, and the FOMO that Rob mentioned feeds into this, I believe, but you see if you're a seller that's frustrated with a lack of sales and you see people with comparable domains selling them for, half of what you've been asking or whatever the case may be, you can double down and say these people don't know the true value, and maybe you're in a position where liquidity is not very important and you want to wait out and get those high prices. But I think a lot of people are saying, you know what, hey, I want to play ball. I want to sell this for some H&S proceeds because I see other things that I want to buy or other things that I want to do with that money. So, that's really where I see, I think among sellers, you're going to have some people who are, shooting for the moon on everything. And those people increasingly, even with, people being willing to pay more prices, you're going to see those sellers kind of on the sidelines. And, at a certain point, even for good domains, people, stop going back to ask and make offers if they think it's just a futile exercise. So I think that you are going to see a lot more, realism from sellers. And another thing that will make, I think, transactions, happen such that, overall we're seeing more volume is, packaging domains together. We've, Namebase has allegedly been working on, bundled sales for a while, which, I'd love to see happen soon. That may or may not occur. But I do think that there's a real awareness for the fact that, just like in, just like in traditional domains, you have typo squatting, you have leakage that comes with people going to similar terms. And if you're an end user for a Handshake domain and you want to put, serious resources into developing it and using it for something, whether it be commercial or personal or whatever use, a lot of those people are going to want the safety of knowing, hey, I don't just have the singular version of this word. I've got the plural as well, and I can redirect people back. Or I've got the most common misspelling. Or in the case of a single emoji, I've got the double and the triple emoji in case people enter it an extra time, or if those other interpretations of the concept are going to be more effective for certain branding. So I don't know if Namebase is going to make this an option through the marketplace anytime soon. I hope that they do, but I do think that even informally, through negotiations, you're going to see more of these package deals or bundles or portfolios, whatever you want to call them, happen. And the realism and the willingness to play ball and not charge $100,000 for every dictionary word on the seller side, I think is going to, if that continues, we're going to continue to see, some impressive and even growing transactions there. So just a couple thoughts I had marrying up the usability and the usage with the transactability from a market perspective.
Yeah, and I want to hit on what you said about kind of protecting yourself by buying multiple domains, by buying like single or double emojis, or buying the plural of whatever you have. This actually happened to one of our community members not too long ago. Paul Webb, he has a company. It's called Ideas Never Cease, and somebody took that TLD, but he had the TLD Never Cease. So he made an SLD with ideas dot never cease. So even and that just goes to show that even if you don't get your TLD, there's always creative ways to domain hack and get the name that you want and yeah.
I think you're right on the money with that, Fist, and that's a great point about the flexibility that, like in Paul's situation, he was able to, change course and get to the same message just with the hack that you mentioned. That's a great thing that I think sellers need to keep in mind, that, I'll put aside, cyber squatting, which I don't recommend people do. And, I don't think is good for the community, but unless you're in a case where it's like, okay, here's somebody's, exact match company name, in which case, you do have some leverage, but it's not, like I said, not wise, I believe, for certain reasons. In any other case, if it's just generic name, you get to a certain point where the person's going to say, forget this, they're charging too much. I can get the same message through a different configuration or different arrangements of words and what have you. So I think that that's something that, as sellers in the community, we need to keep that in mind, that, not everything's a home run in that regard. And there are other alternatives that buyers have, and we need to, be respectful and meet in the middle sometimes as a result of that.
Yeah, yeah. And then tech-wise, Matt or Zach, do you guys want to speak on what you think in the future or within this next year we'll see on Handshake tech-wise?
I'll take a quick stab at that, and then Zach can go. Like I mentioned, there's more secure resolution methods coming from Impervious. You've already mentioned the Opera integration, and probably since everybody here is on Twitter, they've seen Brendan Eich from Brave tweeting about it. We all know that Puma browser has started Handshake integration. It could be better. So, I think by the end of the year, we're going to see a lot of development in that area. I think this stuff is going to move quickly. And to be clear, like, nobody knows what the Opera integration is going to be yet. It could be an HNS.2 proxy like Puma. It could be, it could use a central gateway the way Brave resolves ENS names, or it could be fully secure HNS Lite client the way Beacon Browser and Fingertip work. Obviously, there's a spectrum there, and you guys know how I feel about it, but it depends on how much work the Opera team can do and, frankly, what they're going to get paid for by the DWeb Foundation, which is who they made the agreement with. Also, predictions tech-wise for this year. I'm seeing a lot of people get interested in HIP5 and cross-chain stuff. Luke on the Discord is working on a Hyperledger protocol, and I haven't even been able to catch up on his scheme. He's got a couple ideas that range in complexity that I think are very cool. Rithik has already opened a pull request to Fingertip to add SIA support. Kiba has his XNHNS, which I think is on Polygon or XDAI. So there's lots of other chains. It's funny. I'm a bit of a Handshake maximalist, I guess. Like, I think all the other chain, the decentralized subdomain stuff is very cool. But every time we add one of those, it means more features and complications and security issues and trade-offs for the end user. It's going to end up being like, if you want to resolve all these subdomains, you're going to need to run like 10 different full nodes, including Handshake on your computer. So I'm a little wary of that kind of bloat. Hopefully, I would just like to see content on Handshake. I think the browser adoption is going to hopefully inspire things. Mr. Ass and I have been talking about ways to get more content. And, what I'd love to see this year is just people making Handshake websites. I mean, there's all this cool tech with like cross-chain stuff and people dividing up domains and different investment with things and SLDs and all this kind of cool stuff people can build on Handshake. But honestly, like, for me, I just want to see websites. Like, I've got this browser on my phone and I want some more things to type into it. I want to see Handshake websites that link to other Handshake websites too. Which is something I think that we're kind of missing in the 90s. All the GeoCities websites had something called the web ring, where everybody's website would link to all their friends' websites, and you could kind of spend all day browsing around. And I'd kind of like to see that more on Handshake. So you could go to a Handshake website and browse, surf the web and sort of stay inside of the Handshake namespace for at least a couple clicks. Yeah, I don't know. Zach, do you want to add to that?
Sure. I think I'd echo both the content on Handshake and also some of the cross-chain stuff. I think that it's a good point, the introduction of complexity and trust assumptions when you're thinking about using other chains for subdomains. I think that there's also some interesting ways that Handshake will interoperate with some DWeb protocols, not to be used as subdomains, but just to complement a web stack for using Handshake along with some other web services. And there's interest from a growing set of protocols that are maturing alongside Handshake. And so we've seen some adoption to date from some of those protocols like SIA and Sentinel and the IPFS people and the Arweave people as well. But we've also heard some murmurs from the Cosmos IBC Hub folks that want to introduce Handshake as a sort of naming tool within their system. So I think there's definitely a growing set of protocols that are all starting to fit together and starting to mature. And I think that as those protocols mature, there'll be some early apps that leverage multiple layers of that web stack, including Handshake.
Yeah, and Handshake runs pretty deep with the Cosmos gang. Most of us are big Kosh fans as well as DVPN. We have an integration with them. You know, if you use their VPN services, you can just resolve Handshake names. And then more recently, Steven was talking to the Avalanche team. So that's just another L1 ecosystem that we could be on and that they could be leveraging Handshake to better secure their websites and their protocols that are hosted on there. And to talk more about content, me and Matt have been working on we're going to be hosting like a website hackathon sometime in March during like HandyCon and stuff like that. So we're talking to the Akash and SIA team right now, and you know we're going to put out some more details about that. But you know hopefully we'll get that content on Handshake, so you know you got a reason to download that resolver or download Fingertip or Beacon browser to go see some cool websites and do some neat little things. So hopefully in the future you'll see that stuff. Oh yeah, here I'm gonna bring Mark on stage. Hey Mark, what's going on, man? But I mean, we can kind of open this up to kind of an open floor now. So if anybody wants to come on stage, you can ask any question that your heart desires. You know, it can be from where do I find this resource, more of a tech or philosophical thing about Handshake and what our ideals are, or, what we believe in. So yeah, feel free to come on stage and speak. Mark, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I was just curious if anybody is working on or knows of anyone working on non-custodial second level domain support. While I agree with Matt and the Handshake maximalist from the security standpoint, from a market standpoint, I think that the issuance of second level domains is one of the most attractive things from an investment standpoint. And right now, while we're very much superior in many metrics to any other namespace, the inability to hold second level domains non-custodially and do anything with those, I think, is a major handicap. And so while the integration with other chains like XDAI or Polygon or Avalanche or whatever, or Cosmos may add trade-offs or extra layers of complexity, if it means that we're able to to issue second level domains as NFTs of sorts, I think that's the thing that I'm really looking forward to, and I'm just curious if anyone is working on that.
Yeah, I think what Matt was talking about earlier with Luke with hyperzones, I'm not too sure on. I know it's like all very experimental, and I'm not even really sure how the tech works, but I know that Luke was working on that. But Matt, do you know anything more about that, or can you touch on that more?
Yeah. Decentralized subdomains. It's been a topic since mainnet launched, which is kind of funny because it's not something that I think the founders were thinking of when they were building the protocol and we were working on the software in testnet. And then mainnet launches, and we're like, "Hello world, we give you decentralized top level domains." And the world is like, "Can we have decentralized subdomains?" And it's like, okay. And that's what led to, and Mike Carson was one of those people, and that's what led to Badass and Forever Domains. We can lock a TLD on the chain, and we have special software that can delegate to Ethereum. Both Fingertip and Beacon, of course, have to use the Infura API to do so, which is where I kind of get a little nervous because that's the central gateway and it's trust, it's censorable. All of these. Like I said about a user going to have to run 10 different full nodes. There have been some proposals to put second level domains on chain. I feel like the bigger the Handshake community gets, if there's more of a sub community that wants that, it's going to end up being the Handshake block size debate, because it's going to be a lot of, it could be a hard fork depending on how we do it. It's asking to put a lot more data on chain, which is going to have scaling issues, and we need to be careful how we do that. So I don't know. I mean, it might be fun to have a debate about decentralized second level domains if we need it. A lot of times what I tell people, if they want to, if they want a decentralized second level domain, is why not just get a decentralized top level domain, which I can guarantee you is going to be censorship resistant because it's on the blockchain. So, I don't know. I'll just kind of end there. I feel like I'm not really the best person to answer this because I'm focused more on the root zone and the layer one and things that are secure and accessible by people. And I hear everybody who wants decentralized subdomains, and the way that we made it work so far is by using Ethereum, and I'm not super in love with that, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's open. I don't know what we'll see next.
Yeah, I appreciate your answer and in transparency with that. I agree. I'm not a fan of the ENS fork because it adds this kind of like false equivalence, because people are like, oh, it's ENS, but it's not ENS because none of the integrations follow over because it's a fork. I mean, it's a cool proof of concept to show that that it's something that's possible, and I think that that's good for for adding some kind of hope to it, that there's at least some semblance of a possibility there. But I would much rather see it on something like Avalanche or Cosmos, where it's much more accessible to other people, and also integrates with other protocols that we all like and are friendly with, and that are more in line with the decentralized web ethos of a full stack decentralization. And I know Hugo Fillion from Flare had expressed interest at HandyCon before. It sounds like there were some delays with their Songbird network or Flare network. So again, I'm not sure what some of the technical trade-offs may be with that, but I'm cautiously optimistic to see if that potential partnership or integration would be something that's viable for us. I know Jahan was also promoting that and is friends with Hugo, so maybe they'll be able to work something out with that.
Yeah, and with Cosmos as well, this is something that I kind of just saw, and the amount of education I had on this is a 40-minute podcast that I listened to, but Django was talking with someone from the Axelar network, I believe that's what it's called, and that's how they would bring Bitcoin onto Cosmos, and since Handshake is a Bitcoin fork, then that means that Handshake could probably be brought onto Cosmos as well. But yeah, there's definitely lots of developments. Everything's still feels so experimental, so new. Before we have anything really locked down on the standard of what decentralized SLDs will look like on Handshake, or if we even or yeah. But do we have? Oh yeah, Rob, do you want to? Or sorry, Mark, do you want to say anything else?
Yeah. just that I agree, and I haven't sold a single dollar do or handshake, and I'm if it takes 5 to 8 years for things to fully mature, that the initial domain investors the first time around were easily holding for 10 to 15. And I definitely have a longer term perspective for it. But I do think that to me anyway, the second level domain bit is huge, because then an organization or an entire community can form around a top level domain, and those can act as either gated access or logins, usernames that can be freely issued. And I think that that's just in terms of the community building aspect and the equitability that can create for building communities, and just like kickstarting atomic networks, that's where I think is like really the crux of the issue for me. So anyway, I will let anyone else come up and share their thoughts or perspectives.
All right. Do we have any other questions? We've been here for about an hour or so. But if there's if there's any other questions or any other topics that you guys want to cover right now, you can just make a request to speak, and or we can just call it for the day. I think we had a pretty productive conversation. I really enjoyed having everybody here, so thank you everyone again for showing up. But any save rounds from anyone else? All right. Well, it looks like we'll just call it for the day then. Yeah. Thanks for everybody for showing up. If you're not already, here we got a request right now. Hold on. Hey, how's it going? Oh wait, did they? Oh, there they are.
Oh,
Hey, can you? Okay, cool.
can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. What's up?
Oh, all good. What's up? I have a question. So, what happens to SLD, like sub level domains, if something happens with the top level domains?
Can you kind of clarify, like, what do you mean if something happens to the top level domain?
Like if I gift sub level domains, and eventually, for example, like give away the top level domain, what happens with the sub level domains?
So,
I think I understand the question. And this this kind of goes back to like the debate about decentralized sublevel domains. Handshake, the protocol, the blockchain, only guarantees censorship resistance and security for the top level domain. Anything after that is exactly like the current legacy system without special modifications. So there's an asterisk there, and I'll return to that. But if you have, let's see, what's your name? If you have developer.com, and VeriSign decides they don't like your content, they can remove your website, or they can replace it with some other content, or they can fake an SSL certificate, or they can change your DNS. .com, the parent domain, the top level domain, has total control. It's because DNS is a hierarchical structure. It starts at the top and works down. So if you have a subdomain of .com, you are owned by them. And what Handshake aims to do is to replace the authority at the root zone, so that there is no person or organization that could censor or reject an application, et cetera, for top level domain. So if you have .developer, the top level domain on Handshake, you're good. That you got that with a private key. Nobody can stop you from updating your DNS records. Nobody can stop your users from accessing those DNS records. It's secure. And then, but all of your subdomains, if you give, Mark Smith a subdomain, marksmith.developer, you own him. You can change content on his website. You can change his DNS entries. You can take his website down or replace the content or get a fake SSL certificate and steal all of his customers' data, And when we talk about decentralized subdomains, that is why people from the beginning have wanted decentralized subdomains, is to address the exact concern that you're bringing up. And the way that .forever and .badass has done it is by removing the ability for those name owners to do anything in the root zone. Basically, those names have no owners. If you're more familiar with Ethereum, you can think of a contract with no owner. These are handshake names with no owner. And they can still expire, but they can also be renewed by anyone. I wrote a little program where anybody can pay the mining fee to renew .badass and .forever. Otherwise, they have no owner. Nobody can update the DNS zone. They permanently point to an Ethereum contract. And the Ethereum contract is more complicated, and that's where subdomains are allocated in such a way that they cannot be censored, assuming you have an Ethereum full node. So yeah, yeah. Go ahead. I'm done.
What happens? I think I don't know if he meant if we win a name and then allocate subdomains, gift them to people, and then we sell the TLD to somebody else or gift it to somebody else. Do they then have control of all the sub-level domains? So the person who we've gifted it to would then lose their rights to it because the person who's got the TLD would take control over it.
Yes, you're correct. That's how it works in the ICANN, the legacy domain name space as well.
Yeah.
If you want to think about it as real estate, some cities and countries and states have different rules about it. But let's say I buy a building and I rent out all the apartments,
Yeah,
and then I sell the building. Right? You know, you wouldn't be able to do this in
that's
San
what he meant, the
Francisco.
guy.
Yeah.
I think that's what he was asking. What
Sure.
happens to this?
Yeah, Matt, is there
Thank
a
you.
way that
Of course.
Is there a way that with so for example, when you're staking, we'll call it staking a top level domain on either Ethereum or another protocol. So the contract for the top level domain has no owner, so that there's some level of assurance for second level domain or for registrants that that regardless that there's going to be some permanency in the ownership of that name. Is there a way to transfer the revenue rights for registrations, assuming that there was, for example, the holder of this NFT receives X percent of the registration fees for X TLD, and then make that transferable so that you can essentially transfer the equity rights for registration fees without affecting the movement of the top level domain contract itself.
Okay, I'm going to need you to clarify some of the parts of that question. Like when you talk about staking a TLD, I think mainly what we're talking about is putting a TLD on Namebase and selling subdomains. Is that what you meant, or okay?
No. That because I despite being one of the first people to do that, I see like since then I've seen the issues with that. Right, it's kind of a Web3 veneer is cool for a proof of concept, but I like ultimately the vision that I have for where this space is going, what I would like to see, though I don't have the technical ability to manifest it myself, would be for a truly decentralized marketplace where somebody could basically submit a top level domain, stake it onto the protocol so that they don't have control of it. Nobody has control of it. It's its own contract, but then the registration, set whatever registration for that, and those the registration fees or whatever percent of that is streamed to whatever wallet is holding this particular key NFT.
Okay. I got you. So the thing is, like sublevel, second level domain, if we're just talking about straight up how Handshake works without any Ethereum or sidechain stuff, second level domains are simply not on chain. They're not enforced at all by the Handshake protocol. So as far as like selling subdomains, anytime you talk about selling a subdomain in Handshake, that necessarily has to happen somewhere else. Like you and me, we meet in a coffee shop, you give me $100 cash and you tell me your A record, and I put your set up your subdomain in my zone, and you have to trust me forever that I don't remove it. That's how it works. The way that Badass and Forever work is different because we delegate that to Ethereum, and the income that Impervious makes on selling those subdomains is from Ethereum. In fact, it's kind of funny. Besides donations and Carter and investments and stuff like that, Impervious is a Handshake company whose revenue stream is entirely Ethereum from selling these subdomains on Ethereum. So that's the thing, that there's nothing on Handshake that enforces how you get paid for a subdomain. You necessarily have to do that off chain.
Correct.
And so what you're asking, if you're asking me, I've got blinders on. All I know about is the Handshake protocol. If you're asking me, is there a way to transfer a domain without the new owner being able to change DNS records in this child zone? I mean, no. Let's maybe
But
there's.
yeah, it wouldn't be transferring the domain so much. Like using .badass or .forever as an example. Like if you wanted to transfer the revenues that you were like, if Impervious for whatever reason wanted to transfer those revenue streams, would that be theoretically possible based on again like the transference of an NFT where the holder of this NFT, whatever wallet that is in, receives the revenue streams for this, .forever or .badass that otherwise is completely locked in place.
Yeah, it's funny because to really answer your question, I would have to understand the actual Ethereum contract that Badass and Forever deployed, which I don't.
Fair enough.
My naive understanding is that once those contracts were set up and configured, they were set on Ethereum to have no owner, which I think, but could be wrong, means that the payment address is also hard coded forever, meaning that if for example Impervious loses the private key that is receiving payment, we'll never be able to spend the money, and people will still have to pay that black hole address to register subdomains. But I don't think there's any way for us to change the recipient address for buying subdomains on the Ethereum side. Again, that's not my area of expertise.
Yeah. Again, any perspective there and clarification is great. And so what it sounds like is, I mean, at least within the current setup, they would need to transfer any other contents out of that wallet out, and then you'd basically be selling a wallet at that point, being that the address is hard coded into that. Again, and I'm purely speculating and daydreaming here, but doing something similar to that using Avalanche or Cosmos or Flare or whatever else that we find to have the most optimal or palatable levels of security and decentralization and transaction fees, equity, etc. I think that attaching that to a more transferable NFT or a means to be able to transfer the revenue source without affecting the top level domain will give everybody the most win-win-win assurances and market potential for that. But again, I don't know what I don't know on the technical level.
Yeah, the Handshake, like Bitcoin, has a very limited scripting system. It's not a smart contract scripting system. There are certain you guys probably are all familiar with things like bid, reveal, transfer, finalize from Handshake actions. You can actually incorporate those action types into your script. So the reason that Badass and Forever cannot be updated by anybody, but they can be renewed by everybody, is because the actual address that owns those names, if you look at the blockchain, you'll notice, if go to blockexplore.com, you'll notice that Forever and Badass are both owned by the same address. It's not the usual type of address that corresponds to a single private key in somebody's Bob wallet. It's something called a script address. It's more complicated than a single key. And those addresses actually encode, I guess we could call it a smart contract, even though I just said those don't exist. But a special contract that says nobody is allowed to change the DNS records for this name. If you try to submit a transaction to the Handshake blockchain that says, I am updating the records for this name, doesn't matter who you are, that's an invalid transaction. In fact, the only thing you can do is renew that name. That's what the script allows. Every other action on those names is simply invalid. The transaction is just like having a bad signature. It's wrong. It'd have to be a hard fork to be included in a block, blah, blah, blah. So that's the kind of thing we can enforce. So, if you want to brainstorm, get some developers together and talk about the other types of scripts that you can make, there are some interesting things you could do. You could create a name that cannot be updated, meaning you cannot change the DNS records on chain, but the name could still be transferred. You would have to be careful that you transfer it to somebody who also cannot update it. You can transfer the ownership to a different script. I'm shooting from the hip here. There's different script ideas like that. Just to give you more examples of script ideas, like even though the Handshake white paper mentions this, you could control a name where the DNS records could be updated by, say, your Bob wallet, what we'd call a hot wallet, a private key that's easy to access. But the name can only be transferred by, a 5 of 5 multi-sig where all those keys are on ledger wallets. So if you own a really high value TLD, if you own, I think .x is here on the call, if you own .x, you might want to store the name, prevent transferring the name. You might want to burden transfers with an incredibly complicated script. But maybe you want to be able to update the DNS records frequently. You want to change the TXT record every day, or you want to update your name servers once a month. That maybe you could delegate to a single private key. So there are some other there's some interesting things we can do with individual Handshake name ownership. The other thing I'm going to throw out there, just because I haven't mentioned it yet, I talk about this a lot in the developer channel, and I have never written any code for this. But the idea of a not decentralized, but a federated top-level domain. Okay, so a name that is not owned by one person, but is owned by maybe up to 30 people or 30 different organizations, like a co-op. You could create a Handshake name that is owned by a trustless group of individuals. So, we could get 10 people together to own a Handshake name. They don't have to trust each other. Maybe an 11th person wants to buy a share of that name. They pay all 10 of us, and then we transfer the name to a new multi-sig contract that includes 11 public keys. Okay, so that kind of thing is interesting. It's not decentralized, but it's what we call federated. There's a group of owners, and maybe the policy is 5 of 10 or 7 of 10 or 10 of 10. And then what's interesting about that, to go to one more level, to go to the second level domains from there, is each one of those participants can run their own name server, and each of those name servers can be in the Handshake root zone, so that the Handshake name resolves from any of those 10 name servers. And then we can also use, I'm going to wave my hand at this, but we can also have the zone file, the actual DNS records, signed basically by all 10 people, in a sense, this type of DNSSEC multi-sig. That's the real magic stuff that, the crypto gets really interesting there. But anyway, so just to throw that out there, like before we start going crazy about decentralized subdomains, something that is definitely possible on Handshake today is a federated top-level domain where the Handshake name is owned by a group of people that don't have to trust each other. And maybe it's a co-op where everybody who has a second-level domain owns part of the TLD and has to sign anything that happens on the blockchain regarding that TLD. Okay, I'm encouraging people to get creative here. There is some flexibility.
Yeah, and I just wanted to hit really quick too on the. I'm not like too familiar with it, but the way HNS does it is that it delegates it to a smart contract, and then there's like a chain link transaction that basically like checks to make sure that the nothing is happening with the TLD or nothing is changing with the TLD. And then if it does, then there's some kind of payout or some kind of penalty, or sorry, there's the TLD owner like stakes some money with the TLD, and then if they change anything or mess around with it to kind of screw over the SLD owners, then like they would basically lose all of that money that they staked with that TLD. Again, I'm not like too familiar with how that all works, but you can read about it more in Kaiba's blog post about XNHNS and how they handle their way of doing decentralized SLD. But yeah, did anybody else want to add on anything or say anything else? Or want to come up and talk about or ask a question?
Looked like there was a FTSO.eu was raising their hand before, but I don't see them in the stage.
I'm not sure what happened to them.
Hello?
Hey, what's up,
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you just good.
So we're building our name layer wallet, and like I think version 3 we're gonna like hit on some of the stuff Mark talked about, and I hope that's done this year, but I'm not 100% sure. But Zipkin, you kind of talked about some things I spoke with Jackie on. So name layer, it's like 3 parts, like a smart contract for SLD ownerships, a DNS records manager, and then it's like decentralized name server. And we want to have like a standard where anyone could run a name layer name server anytime, and any TLD owner or SLD owner could run a name server. Any community member could run a name server. And anyone could build a new registrar UI on top of our smart contract to be like a competitor. So with all that stuff combined, I think we'll get there, but it's probably going to be like close to the end of the year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man, that sounds dope, man. That sounds really cool. Encrypted, did you wanna talk on anything?
I mean, I don't want to interrupt anything important because mine isn't really important at all. It's kind of just a rumor.
No, shoot, man. What is it?
So with the whole Nimbus SLD revamp, like they've been doing something, I don't know, it's not up at the minute. I heard that Nimbus could have potentially been acquired by Namecheap, and I was kind of wondering, does anyone know anything on that?
Yeah, I don't know anything that's going on internally with Namebase. I kind of like check in their Discord every so often and see what's going on. But other than that, yeah, I think Peepo, he was the one that started talking about that, about Namecheap acquiring like 51% of Namebase or something like that, or acquiring a lot of their TLDs or something like that. But yeah, no, I don't know anything about that. I don't know if anyone up here knows anything more.
Matthew?
Yeah, I don't know. Matt's not real deep with Namebase either.
Yeah, it's alright, it's cool. I just figured it'd be funny to bring it up because, spicy.
Yeah, that would definitely take. Well, that would be actually really cool to see because that would mean that Namecheap is like basically going all in on Handshake, and them being the second largest registrar out there. That's pretty big, and that's like a big signal to the rest of not only like registrars but to the entire ICANN world because they definitely have to be deep in with ICANN if they're running such a big registrar. So um, I think that would send some waves through, and we'll have to see what comes of that and the conversations that sparks.
I thought of a really cool thing that could happen though if Namecheap did acquire Nimbus, and they have like a WHMCS reseller package on Namecheap, and I was thinking if they're going all in, then they may put some funds into developing like a plugin that allows people to put their name on their own registrar as long as it's through Namecheap, and then you could make some money off that, and only they could exclusively have the Handshake community.
Yeah, I would hope that they would put some funding into developing more of the ethos of Handshake 2 or under that ethos. Because right now we have all of the handicaps of both Web 2 and Web 3 with those. And so, I mean, like, I don't know of a single site that's in use for a second level domain. So I agree with Matt. I'd like to see more sites being built out, and I need to learn more about how to use some of them, especially with Arweave. I have some blogging ideas that I want to do with that, but yeah, if Namecheap does that, I think it would be huge. It would definitely send waves throughout the industry, but I would hope that they would do that in a way that is actually progressing the protocol as opposed to just creating a new speculative market based on some future development.
Yeah, absolutely. Tim, what's up, man?
Hey there, thanks so much. This is an amazing call. I have been buying up some TLDs and learning about Handshake for the last few months and really learned a lot. My primary interest is in the area of decentralized SLDs. Really, as a non-developer, I've been looking at the badass and the forever repos and with a friend trying to look at like understanding those and seeing if we wanted to do something like that. It seems like the community is working toward, there might be other solutions coming in the future. I guess my other question would be, as I continue to learn about the additional utility of HNS beyond like an ENS clone, is my first light bulb that went off was like the utility of like a wallet address with a TLD that identifies around a certain affinity group or brand or community. So help me understand, I suppose, is there, what would be the steps for HNS like SLDs to be useful as wallet addresses for like any given wallet? Is that like the wallet app integrating that, or yeah, how do we get to the point where we can use Handshake names as native wallet addresses like ENS names, or is that just not possible?
It's definitely possible. There's actually a standard that the developer community have been working on called HIP2, HIP2. HIP stands for Handshake Improvement Proposal, similar to BIPs, Bitcoin Improvement Proposals. There's several of these HIPs. You can find them on hsd-dev.org/HIPs. And they range from all types of things, like the contract that ShakeDex uses, that kind of protocol is a HIP, that kind of thing. So anybody can submit anything they want to be a standard in the community or in the technology, or even a hard fork or soft fork on the blockchain, which probably start off as a HIP. So HIP2 describes a way to associate a cryptocurrency wallet address with a Handshake name, any cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, even a PayPal address. Like, it's basically just a standard way to find out how to pay a person who owns a Handshake name. The way that that protocol was designed is it still requires a name server and a web server, which I know a lot of people aren't really as into. People seem to just want to put things directly on the blockchain, which of course is also possible. And there's another proposal out there I saw by James Stevens. I don't think he's formally proposed it yet. But, the simplest thing to do is you add a text record in the root zone with your Bitcoin address. Or, since all Handshake names are owned by a Handshake address, you could also just send money to that Handshake address. There's a bit of like a irony, I think, that ENS names are owned by an Ethereum address, and then what you do with it is you add an Ethereum address to that name so that people can pay you. So the same thing's true with Handshake, but maybe you want to receive donations to a different address than the name that owns the wallet address that owns the name. The reason that HIP2 was designed to use a name server and a web server is basically twofold, as opposed to just putting things directly on chain. One, the blockchain is not really a great place to put content. To help the chain scale, what we want to do is just use the chain to use it as a referral system, so that there's very little data actually on the blockchain, as little as possible. Changing things on the blockchain is slow and it's expensive, and if everybody does it, the chain's going to get very big very fast, and fees are going to go up very fast. Ethereum doesn't care about this because nobody actually validates the Ethereum blockchain. Handshake, we care about that because we want people to be able to run full nodes. But yeah, even if you did put your Bitcoin address in the Handshake root zone, if you ever wanted to change that, you'd have to pay, a minor fee, and it would take up to 6 hours for that to get added to the Oracle tree. And, so that's one thing. The other design decision is that as cypherpunks, we believe a little bit more in privacy. And so we think that reusing the same address is actually a bad practice. And you'll see this even in Bob Wallet and in typical Bitcoin wallets, that you get a new address every time you make a transaction, and that makes your behavior on the public blockchain easier to put together and to try to figure out which person owns all the same names and how much money one person has. Again, this is not something that apparently the Ethereum community cares about. They like having one static Ethereum address where, like I think Brantley the COO of ENS, tweeted a couple months ago that he was hiring, and that anybody who applied to work at ENS, he just simply looked at their Twitter profile, looked up their ENS handle, and then saw all their trades on Uniswap. I don't like that. Other people might like that. I'm sure all those people also have private addresses where they do private trades on Uniswap that's not associated with their Twitter handle. And okay, fine. But anyway, I'm just explaining the design decision behind HIP2. We think that putting data directly on chain is slow and expensive. We think that using static wallet addresses is bad practice. And so by asking users to run a server, it can generate new addresses with every request. All you need to do on the blockchain is point to that server. So sorry, that's a really long answer. The quick answer is, if you want to put a Bitcoin address on chain, go ahead and do that. And then we're done. And we can make a standard out of that. And, you open whatever wallet you have. You can type your Handshake name into Coinbase. They can find your Bitcoin address on the Handshake blockchain and send you Bitcoin that way.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. I know it was pretty long, and obviously a bunch more stuff to continue learning. So I really appreciate that.
Hey, Ruben, what's up? Or is that, I don't know if that's how you pronounce your name, Ruben.
Yeah, it's like the sandwich. So Handshake seems super interesting. Let's say that I'm building a layer 2, and in this little layer 2, you've got identities, which are sometimes natural persons and sometimes legal persons. But these natural and legal persons may not just have one wallet. They may have multiple wallets that they use for different purposes that they want to use for underneath the same identity. Have y'all figured out how to do recoverable, revocable identity? Because I have not found how. I haven't found like a non-mind-numbing solution for recoverable and revocable identity on Web3 yet. And so I'm just sort of floating around like the layer ones and the folks messing around with identity. I think ENS is working on it, but I haven't seen anything solid. Yeah, what have you been poking that one at all? Any hot takes?
I really cannot speak on this confidently. But what I would recommend is you can hop in our Discord. It's our pinned tweet under our profile, and ask the question in the DWeb dev chat or the general chat or whatever. We have a lot more people over there that are a lot more technically minded, and they might be able to answer your question better over there. So yeah, I would refer you out because I'm not the most technical. I'm not very technical.
Copy that.
All right, awesome. All right. Anyone else? Anyone want to ask a question or come on stage to say anything? Any comments, questions? I'll just wait a minute and see if I get any requests. All right. Well, I don't see any more requests coming up. But yeah, I hope everybody here had a great time. Got to learn some stuff, and hopefully we'll do this again next month or make this like a monthly thing to kind of have this kind of group community call. If you want to follow up with anybody, just we're all on Twitter. But again, you can find our Discord if you click on our profile, and our pinned tweet is our Discord. There's a lot more people there chatting all things Handshake. So definitely pop in there if you want to get more involved or you want to learn something else or yeah. But yeah, everybody, thanks for showing up again and see you guys soon.
Thank you.